Thank you for the kind introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Bedkar, for giving us the landscape, the technology landscape that commercial vehicle industry is likely to witness. I'd like to build upon some of the points that you mentioned, Mr. Bedkar, but my presentation will revolve more around the insights and from the market perspective. So before we head on what's happening in the commercial vehicle industry, let's try and take a step back and understand what's happening with the India story. 5 out of 10 world's most polluted cities are from India. We are the 3rd largest GHG emitters in the world. Irrespective of which cities you have come here today, you would probably agree that heat wave, cold wave, erratic monsoons have become a part of our lives, unfortunately. So as the economy grows, population grows, rate of urbanization increases, the per capita income, which is hopefully trying to move upward scale and projected to be around about $5,200 per capita in this, by 2030-32, you can imagine the kind of freight demand that's just going to go northwards, and so will the pollution, right? Unless we accelerate our efforts to really reduce our import dependencies on crude oil, on gas. We improve our efficiencies within the logistics domain. Well, government and industries are doing their bit, and we do see some improvement in terms of our global ranking. Be it on the logistics front, we have moved up a couple of ranks from being rated 55 way back in 2014 to coming back to a range of 35. Long way to go, yet true. But our competitiveness is increasing as we progress, supported by the policies and initiatives in the industry. Having said that, there are 3 critical aspects that we really need to look at. One is our energy mix. It's highly skewed to more of crude, and we need to really focus on putting it to a renewable energy zone. Currently, around about at 15% contribution is from RE, aimed at 40%. So, if you talk about efforts toward digitalization, it definitely helps us improve the efficiencies within the entire ecosystem. And as we know that road sector accounts for almost 14% of these GHG emissions, and we are looking at 2nd largest road network as a country and growing at almost 20-25 kilometers per day. So with this context and climate change taking the center stage, focus of the entire industry on improving efficiencies and reducing costs, right? I mean, all of these actually impact the trends that we as commercial vehicle industry face. Some of the technological aspects Mr. Bedkar said, I'd like to elaborate some of those, but what's happening on the value chain, if you see, there is an influx of a lot of new startups, a greater role of electronics, IT, services, disruptions in business models, and shifting nature of BOM, right? The bill of material is shifting, and all of this happening simultaneously. OEMs are moving away from just selling products to selling solutions. We have seen some disruptions within the last mile mobility, as just Mr. Bedkar just touched upon, and thanks to this asset-light models is trying to bridge gap all those viability gaps that we have for a quicker transition. So having said that, we need to really focus on localization, and without it, it's very difficult to transition that industry, the transformation that we are expecting, and while doing so, I think so design for environment, manufacturing implies sustainability has to be our focus area. And all of these, it's very interesting that it took almost startups to come up with brilliant ideas and frugal, innovations to really make the shift happen. So I must compliment all of the startups here. And if you think that in the last 5 years you saw a lot of investments, hold back for next 10 years. I think so we'll see multi-fold investments coming into this industry driven by these trends. So if I have to give you a quick landscape on how the demand outlook looks like for commercial vehicle industry, like Mr. Bedkar just mentioned, that we have seen a lot of headwinds in the past, and rightly so. Many of those were regulatory, policy driven, COVID, healthcare scare, Yeah, I mean, everything said behind, I mean, we all know that commercial vehicle industry is highly cyclical. Currently, we are at the 5th year of our cycle compared to the last peak that we achieved, right? And going forward, coupled with the election year that we have next year, we envisage the projects to slow down and maybe a small dip next year, but we believe there is a lot more growth to come compared to the amount of infrastructure activities happening, and also the GDP projections that we envisage going forward. So even today we are at a lower base compared to the GDP growth rate, so there is a lot of room for further growth. As such, we envisage that the dip may be only for a year, and we may get back to up cycle going forward. Come 26, 27, we cannot avoid Euro 7. There's no indication yet, but we believe anywhere between 27, 28, we can expect Euro 7. And at the same time, we are seeing some tractions with multimodal transportations, which may partially hit the HGV truck segment. So you will see slight dip in that era. But speak about climate change, and we need to really address on vehicles in service. So at some point, we believe that retrofitment has to play a larger role in the industry. Having said that, H2ICE, which Mr. Bedkar also said, is an interesting development, and if it finds its way into PLI, we may see a faster traction of it in the next 2 years. Our discussions with OEMs and suppliers indicate that as early as 24, 25, we may see H2ICE coming in as a pilot stage. So in sum, I think so, light commercial vehicles, we believe, is headed for a multi-year growth compared to the cyclicity that we observe for MSCVs, and primarily driven by 3 aspects: the institutionalization of the buyer category within the small commercial vehicles. We are seeing a lot of startups as intermediaries who buy assets, so and bridge gap that growth, that and also focusing on the TCO. So I believe if you compare globally, we are still at less than 1:2 ratio for MSCV versus LCV. So there's a lot of headroom for growth as far as the light commercial vehicles concerned. And if you put as an industry as a whole, we should be happy if we can see a 1 million mark achieved somewhere around 26, 27 back what we achieved in back in 2018, which was a historical growth year. See, having said that, let's keep aside the cyclicity and the CAGR growth rate apart. If you look at the absolute volumes, right, look at 2015. We were looking at 750,000 kind of volumes as an industry, which moved up to almost around 850,000 vehicles that industry is clocking. And count this 23 onwards to 2030, I believe comfortably 900, 950,000 volumes look reasonable. So we are just going to grow from here as projected, and entire 2030 onwards, it can be 1 million plus vehicles on an average every year, excluding cyclicity. So there's a lot of action happening, and if you have to just quickly have a glance on what's happening on the technology front with commercial vehicles on alternate fuels. Mr. Bedkar just mentioned that CNG has become very prominent in the last 2 years. Truly so. Back in 2015, in one of the conferences, we were discussing the infrastructure challenges. We were talking about 1,500 stations back then. It's come down to almost 5,000 now, but we are still 50% away from the target. But hey, I mean, look at that direct pooling of infrastructure support to the adoption of alternate fuels. So although we saw 21, 22 as a greater adoption of CNGs into the system, we believe it's also coupled with the diesel price hikes, and as history says that as diesel price hike, CNG gets a better share. As diesel price subside or gap subsides, it comes back to its average contribution. LNG has been discussed for a while. It may find its way around the coastline from south to west, and some portions on the Golden Quadrilateral. So as such, maybe tractor-trailer applications may find its good applications in LNG. But H2ICE looks extremely promising, and not only in India but globally. It allows most of those in the ecosystem to use the existing assets, not disrupt the ecosystem. It actually, you know, covers up all the challenges that we have with other alternate fuels like payload, refueling time, you know, the TCO. So all put together, these transition technologies are likely to stay at least till 2035, and till we achieve our zero emission, you know, infrastructure in place. We are seeing a lot of traction in terms of battery electric vehicles and small commercial vehicles despite these challenges. So imagine a scenario when these infrastructure challenges are solved, we will have an zero emission future going forward. So if I have to translate these into numbers, yeah, I mean, there's so much activity happening. I would claim that let's take this directionally, but the direction looks really clear that although the percentages look very minuscule of electric today, I think so the way we are transitioning right from less than IL segment, I think so anywhere between 30-35% of electric penetration is a good achievement realistically, and if the infrastructure falls in place a little quicker than what we envisage, we can look at upwards contribution. So, you know, we can also say that this is probably the golden era of gas, where we'll see the maximum penetration of gas-based vehicles in this era. And you know, all of these have their own sweet spots, so it's very difficult to disregard any of these technologies. All of them are likely to coexist, and you know, all through the 2035 scenario. So if I quickly sum up here, I mean, we are moving from tailpipe emissions to life cycle emissions. Although we claim this as a transition technologies, what CNG, LNG, H2Is, right? Think of it cumulatively over a period of next 10-12 years. They will contribute significantly in terms of emission reductions, right? So even if we think that, okay, let's really focus for zero emission technologies, transition technologies will play a very critical role going forward, at least till 2035. And what's happening with the ecosystems, I think so it's about time that we really scale up our startups. There's a lot of digitalization that also needs to be done on the system level, not at only organization level. So I think so a lot of us complain about fuel infrastructure is public-private partnerships. So it's a very important aspect that the private participation increases in improving the fuel infrastructure. Supply side never seems to be short of food on plate. Yeah, they're always on toes. But it's about time that we really focus on high value manufacturing, right? I mean, it's we tend to just import high value items and plug and play. I think so that era is going to be over, and we need to look at modular purpose-built platforms. These are here to stay, and we'll have to accelerate the localization aspect, and that supply side mandate only will make it happen. So there's no other way localization is going to happen. Also, you know, if there are some new entrants looking at some share of pie in this growing industry, I would say there's ample to offer. Import substitution, think of it, we still import ton of electronics and almost high value add items. So there is a lot of on component and part level that we could really localize here. And you know, let's speak about retrofit solutions. I mean, that's an interesting era which may just allow a lot of startups to enter and scale up. This is an era for you know, fit to market or custom built solutions. So if you have anything around that, maybe it works really fine. And think about it that most of our replacement cycle is an organized industry. Kaushik, you may agree to that. So we are looking at organized logistics, organized used truck ecosystem. Well, everything said and done, finally, all of these organizations are people-driven, and unless we try to understand the new beast with electrical, electronics, you know, and also ELVs, you just mentioned end-of-life vehicles, we are not used to managing effectively or have the right skill sets yet to scale up to that level. So upskilling, reskilling is going to be a very, very important role. And so to speak, also in a data economy, we're the largest consumers of data, think of connected systems, and making sense out of data. Data is going to be a very crucial differentiating factor according to us. So, so let's get ready for a decade of transformation. And for all of those who are still wondering who's this guy and what are these guys up to, I'll take a moment to introduce ourselves. So we act as catalysts to help you excel, transform and grow. Expandus has entered its 10th year of business, and we have been lucky to work with world's leading tier 1, tier 2 companies, and primarily we focus on mobility, electronics and plastic segments. That's what we understand. We come from 30 years of electronic component manufacturing, so we understand very well of what happens to the proposed solutions when it trickles down to the shop floor. So that's an area that we have been focusing all through. As far as commercial vehicle industry is concerned, I think so we have some unique database with respect to electric vehicle, highly configurable in terms of right from model level insights to complementing with components, parts, and what does this allow you to do right from CEO to marketing and sales to R&D and operations. The same data intelligence can be transferred for different decision makings. And if any of these interests you, I'll be happy to discuss. And let's start our Pack Day going forward. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.